Okay, the 2022 Six Nations preview is here. Yes, the Six Nations is just weeks away. It kicks off in February. It's going to be very, very interesting, I think, and a far more open Six Nations this year than in previous years. There's three teams for me that stand out as head and shoulders above the rest. There are two teams that I think are going to struggle this year, and then there's another team that I think are going to be dark horses. So let's start where I think teams end up finishing in the final Six Nations table. I think Italy will be the wooden spoonists. They've got a very strong pack as normal, and they've got some very good young forwards and backs now in the side. It's all about getting that 80-minute performance together. They do have tries in them. They do try and play an expansive style. It's their discipline and their organisation that lets them down. And of course, the Zebra and Treviso, Benetton Treviso, are playing reasonably well in the new United Rugby Championship, the former Pro League. So they have some solid club foundation. It's just taking that next step and getting all the pieces together for an 80-minute performance consistently. But they do have some young, talented players in there. Pelledri, obviously, leading the line as captain. So there is the pieces there. It's just getting it together, but I don't think they're quite ready during this World Cup cycle to take that next step. I think the team that will finish fifth again will be England. I honestly think England, in recent years under Eddie Jones, it's just not working. The discipline is shocking. They have the worst disciplinary record out of the six countries when it comes to penalties, yellow cards, and infringements, and that has constantly been too high. Even when they're winning games, their penalty count is shockingly high, and I do think the referees will be given a directive to really start clamping down on repetitive infringements. We've seen it over recent years where repetitive, like 3, 4, 5 infringements, and suddenly you're on a team warning. We did see it in the women's games over the autumn as well. I think the referees have been given that directive now to stamp out repetitive infringements, and England's discipline has been the worst out of the six. And I think they've gone as far as they can with Eddie Jones as well. I think they have gone as far as they can. There is just something not flowing right with the talent England have available. I think they are not going to do very well. They finished fifth last year as well. So England, I have concerns about England, going forward. Scotland, the Jekyll and Hyde team, in my opinion, with Scotland. They're brilliant in attack. There's no denying Scotland's attack is one of the most exciting attacking lineups they can put on the field, but they have 6 uncapped players in the squad. And defensively, I'm still not sold on Scotland defensively. That is one of their big weaknesses. They do leak a lot of points. While they can score freely at one end, they are a sieve defensively, and they have been for several years. That's an issue for Gregor Townsend to figure out. Don't get me wrong, they have got some very, very talented players, but those talented players can also be a bit Jekyll and Hyde as well. So it'll be interesting to see if they can figure out the defensive side of the game a little bit, because at times they're too defensively open and the defensive structures get either too narrow or too loose. They don't communicate very well, and that is a bit frustrating, but they do play a very attractive attacking style when they have ball in hand. They do play at a fast pace. It's all about can they do that consistently over 5 games with the attack, and defensively, can they be more defensively solid going into this Six Nations? I think Wales will finish third under Wayne Pivac. They have solved a lot of their issues under Wayne Pivac. They have made some coaching changes under Wayne Pivac that seem to have solidified things a little bit. However, and I will say this, however, they can become a little bit one-dimensional at times. Defensively, they are outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. But I think the 10-12 position, Dan Biggar for me is the most consistent fly half they have, and that 10-12 axis for me, sometimes they do lose games in that position, but they're a solid side, and I can see them being in some very tight games. But I think there are 2 sides better than them right now in the Northern Hemisphere. They could win the Grand Slam. They could win the Six Nations again, but I think that most likely they're going to finish third, and that's my prediction. But I do see them beating the teams below them and beating the teams below them comfortably. In years past, they've had a few banana skins against Italy. In years past, the England-Wales game tends to decide, where Wales end up. But I think Wales have got too much for England. Their structures are far better now, and they have turned a corner under Wayne Pivot. There were some concerns in the early days under Wayne Pivot that it was the wrong coaching appointment and things weren't right, but they have turned a corner. And sometimes their rugby isn't the most attractive. But they've got players like Rhys Sammet coming through who are young and exciting. And I think Dan Biggar gives them a bit of competence and calmness at 10. I think go with Biggar at 10. We're halfway through a World Cup cycle. I can't see him being the fly half come the next World Cup. However, for right now, in bringing the new players through, you need a bit of experience in the creative positions and allow your young, exciting players to thrive. I think that's a good blueprint. And defensively, they've figured out the structures under Wayne Pivac now. There was a brief period where they were not playing very well in his first few months in charge. The win record wasn't great, and they were losing a lot of games. They've turned that corner. They're now ready to take that next step, but you don't want them to peak too soon with the World Cup coming in 2 years' time. I think Ireland will finish second. I just think the French have a little bit more in their locker. Ireland, again, it's to do with that 10-12 axis, that 9-10-12 axis. How long has Johnny Sexton got left at the top level? Injuries as well in that axis have proven crucial for Ireland in recent years. They are a little bit more of a kicking team than other teams. They run the ball less. And I think with the way the game is evolving in the last couple of years, the running game, there's got to be more emphasis on running the ball back rather than kicking it back. That can be a flaw in their game plan, is over-kicking the ball. But beating the All Blacks recently, that's, got to be, a big boost for them. Is beating the All Blacks. One of only, I think, 3 teams this calendar year to beat the All Blacks, the others being the French and the Springboks. So they got that, I think, to boost them, is having a very strong performance against the All Blacks in the autumn. And they have got some young, talented players coming through, but I do believe their weakness is depth at 10. If Sexton is injured at any point, the follow-up fly halves, while they are talented, they are still raw, they're still not the finished article, and Sexton still dominates that creative axis at 10, and how long can he keep going? Again, there is time, obviously, to make improvements and changes before the next World Cup, and they are coming off the back of a very, very successful autumn international series, so they're in a very strong position, and they've been so consistent over the last 5, 6, 7 years. They've become a bit of a machine, but there are weaknesses in that machine, and they are overly reliant on kicking from hand during open play when there's trying to be more encouragement to run the ball back. And they do have some very, very talented, pacey wingers as well and outside backs. So I would look to Ireland to try and run the ball back more. But for me, I think the favourites this year have got to be the French. I think they've got it right now. They've got their axis right. They've got a young, talented team. They're big, they're physical, but also their outside backs are exceptionally quick. And they play with confidence, and they're playing with flair, and they're willing to throw the ball around. And they play the ball with pace now. The issue with the French has always been their discipline. Their discipline is improving, but their penalty count is still too high. I think that's one of their biggest weaknesses is staying out of the referee's, ire, so to speak. That is a big weakness to the French game, is their discipline. Their fitness is massively improved. As I said, they are a much younger, fitter side than what they were before the last World Cup. They've really turned a corner with this current group of players. The selection is now more consistent, and this is the France we want to see. A young, vibrant, talented attacking team that also are very physical in defence. They've got their game plan right. They are generally, I think, for me, they could win the Grand Slam. I think they're the only team, I think, right now that could win every single game. But also their attitude, it could be their weakness. Their discipline and their attitude, if things start going wrong with the French, they tend to implode, and it tends to go horribly, horribly wrong very, very quickly. But on paper, for me, they are the best team that can be fielded, and they are the favourites for this year's Six Nations. So there we go. I think England are going to struggle this time round. I think Italy will be the wooden spoonists, although they might have a shock winning them. They might pull off a potential shock of another team. Scotland, attacking-wise, very much like the French, very fun to watch, but defensively, they leak too many points. Wales, I think, are slightly in a transition period, but they have turned a corner under Wayne Pivac. I still think there's room for improvement from Wales, but they've got some very, very talented outside backs. Rhys Sammet, for example, for me, is the standout in their backline. Ireland and Wales, I think, have issues at 10 long term with replacements with their dominant fly halves in Biggar and Sexton. But if you keep Biggar and Sexton for this Six Nations, they can control the game a little bit, and you have some good runs off them and some good young outside backs that can link up with them. So stick with the experience, I think, for those two. Injuries in those positions could prove crucial and could derail their possible Six Nations hopes. And France, I think, are the team to beat because they just are oozing confidence. And in attack, it's just how do you pick them up in attack? Their runs off the ball and they attack the ball with pace. And their forward pack is young, mobile, and physical. And in defence, they've turned it up in defence. They are far more defensively organised, but their free flowing attack is just beautiful to watch. So there you go. That's my predictions, I think, for the 2022 Six Nations. Thank you very much for watching. Please place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.